and welcome to my video. In this video, I will discuss the 2 coping habits that people use to avoid unpleasant or troubling thoughts, which I discovered while I was still an undergraduate at university. I used to train in Aikido, a Japanese martial art. Our teacher, the sensei, had told us that we needed to key our breathing in with our opponents so that we could have an advantage. That advantage is that we have power. When we breathe out, we take action as we breathe out. When a person is breathing in, they have no power. So if we key our breathing in with our opponents, then we know when they're breathing in, and if we have made sure that we are breathing out at that time, we can have the best advantage. When I asked him about how can I train, he told me that, well, why not use the people around you, people that you meet every day? So I did that. Some months later, after I had practiced this technique, a very big guy came to our classes. He was a new student, a novice. The sensei pointed to him and pointed to me that I would be his opponent. I trusted the sensei, but I looked at him in disbelief. In his minimal English, he said to me, "You good." So I got the confidence to go ahead. I was shocked, and so was he. I thought, wow, the techniques work, and the breathing was very important. So I decided to go on a much bigger campaign and train with people around me on a longer basis in many and varied situations. I soon found that people's breathing changed when they became distressed or talked about something that was troubling. This was very interesting. So soon the scientist in me took over, and I conducted an experiment that spanned initially over 2 years, and possibly 2,000 people became subjects in that experiment. None of them, of course, had any inkling that an experiment was being conducted. I observed that people's breathing changed in one of 2 ways. Either they started to take deeper breath or shallower breath. Now, why? This was another interesting finding. So I knew 2 things. One is that the person's breathing changed, either shallower or deeper, and the other that it changed when a person was distressed or there was some troubling ideas. To examine what was going on, I used the only means that I had available to me, and that was insight meditation. I had not enough meditational experience at the time, but years later, with a lot of meditational experience, I had verified what I had observed earlier, and I observed a lot more and gained a far deeper understanding of what was going on. After some time of normal breathing, I changed my breathing to shallower breathing by using the chest to breathe rather than the belly. And I repeated the exercise using deeper breathing by extending the belly further. For a long time, I believed that what I found was that both of these, shallow breathing and deeper breathing, affected the level of awareness. Now I realize that it's the level of consciousness that is affected. Consciousness being awareness with knowledge. It is the information in the mind, the thoughts that are affected. Both deep breathing and shallow breathing affect the heart, and this is because the heart and the lungs are two parts of one system. Shallow breathing is much like the early stages of sleep, where the heart rate decreases a little bit. There's a sort of lethargy that is created. Taking deeper breath increases the heart rate and thus raises the metabolism. But there's a shift in the balance so that the body gets more fuel materials for energy production than the brain. I also found that the brain has more homework, inverted commas, to do in order to facilitate the higher bodily metabolism. So there is also, we could say, a distraction. The thinking processes are disadvantaged both in that the brain not getting as much fuel material as it does in resting metabolism for optimum thinking, but also there's a lot more work for the brain in facilitating the higher metabolism for the body. So there's a distraction away from thinking. So I would say that these processes associated with shallow breathing and deeper breathing are really the means by which people suppress thoughts that are troubling. Scientific experiments have shown that deep breathing increases the heart rate and shallow breathing decreases the heart rate, but none associate these breathing changes with suppressing thoughts. They were simple observations associated with heart rate. The only mention that I have seen is that people are advised that if they feel panic, to take a deeper breath to help them relax. But the reality is they don't become relaxed because the heart rate goes up. And if the heart rate is already high, the heart rate's going to go up even higher. As a quick fix in a panic, this can work, but only for someone with shallow breathing coping habit. This has nothing to do with suppressing thoughts. It is the shallow breather stopping the coping habit because they will take deep breaths. They can see that it doesn't help everyone, and the reason is because it doesn't help a deep breather. In fact, it would make the problem worse. If you look at their advice, you find that it's slower breathing that is needed to relax. I have yet to make my video on panic attack, but in a panic attack, it is the coping habit that is the problem, which is used when the person attempts to suppress an idea that is distressing, like something terrible can happen. The use of a coping habit when the heart is working hard, as it does in a fight or flight response, is seriously problematic for the heart. The reason is because either there will be conflict in heart function or overexertion of the heart. Both are not good. It is a clear example that the coping habit can pose serious health problems. The only reason why a panic attack is not life-threatening is because it is not sustained long enough. It is usually over after a few to 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the most. The biomedical scientists and the doctors don't associate the breathing changes as the means of suppressing troubling thoughts. Both of these coping habits are bad for a person's health when it comes to long-term stress over hours. Concealed threats are never continuous 24/7, but they may take place over several hours each time. And the hassle could take place over weeks or months and even years. And a coping habit can do harm. Most particularly, they affect the heart. Shallow breathing decreases the heart rate, and if it's at a time of a concealed threat with an increased heart rate, then the heart becomes conflicted, as there are signals to go fast and slow, then fast and slow. If it's deeper breathing, which increases the heart rate, and again, for concealed threat where the heart is already working hard, then the heart becomes overexerted. Because when the heart is already working hard, it's getting signals to work harder. Of course, the coping habits also affect the lungs, and if the coping habit is habitual from childhood, then lung capacity can be affected. From my observations, habitual deeper breathing will cause the person to develop an enlarged rib cage and overexpanded lungs, and habitual shallow breathing will do the reverse. The person will have decreased lung capacity and a smaller rib cage. The medical profession put this down to genetics. Can this be reversed? Can the body remake itself given that the coping habit is corrected? I believe so. But there is a lot of debate around this. Coping habits also affect your overall weight. If you take deeper breaths, then your metabolism goes up, you use more fuel, and if you use more fuel, you store less. So even on a regular diet, you will be underweight. If you are taking shallower breaths, then the opposite happens. Your metabolism goes down, you are using less fuel, store more. And so again, on a regular diet even, you will be overweight. So what to do? How to get rid of the coping habit? We can get rid of the coping habit. It will take time, but we can get rid of it with 2 acknowledgements. Firstly, and important to recognize that only our own thinking carries our authority, which is why we may react to the thoughts. Suggestions that are made mentally by other people that may appear like our own thinking, and these thoughts are always disturbing, unsettling, troubling. But they are bogus, they're rubbish. Once we can acknowledge this, we can simply reject them, dismiss them. Thus a coping habit becomes redundant. We don't need it. We no longer seek to employ changes in breathing. Secondly, we need to learn to recognize the ideas that are presented to us mentally that are not our own thinking. We can learn to recognize these ideas because they simply pop into mind. They come out of the blue. They do not arise out of our deliberate calling an idea into mind. They are not part of our own thinking and reasoning and recollection processes. They are mere perceptions, perceptions only, and they are cunningly presented. There is also one more thing that I should mention, and that is personal information is gathered from the person they mean to victimize or someone close to them. someone that knows something about them. And that may include the so-called flying monkeys. These are people that are false friends, but some are little known, or maybe even strangers to the targeted person, the person they want to victimize. They are willing to listen, empathize, and even offer some advice. But they are really there to gather information. Then that personal information is used against the person. And of course, it is very difficult to discern sometimes that it's not one's own thinking, because there are issues that we are concerned about. So it seems reasonable that this may be our own thinking. In fact, it is not. Again, you will see that it comes out of the blue and not as a result of one's thinking and reasoning. True it is that we may, on very rare occasions, get information from our environment, and it may indicate some danger, but those ideas are never troubling, never disturbing. Rather, they may cause us to see where we need to protect ourselves. Recognizing and rejecting ideas being presented to you is of primary importance. If you do this over time, you won't use the coping habit anymore. Thank you for viewing my video. And here is my place when it rains and feeding the bush turkeys.